Hey, Mimico. My name's John Matthews, and I'm so glad to be joining you all today. I get to be telling you about the true story of Daniel in the den of lions. And to help me, I don't have a lion, but I've got a tiger who can kind of, I don't think he'll sit on the table here with me. But yeah, I'm so glad to be able to share you about this. Daniel is one of my favorite people in the Bible. He was an awesome guy. They keep talking about how he lived with integrity and faith. He just had a faith about God. Like he just cared so much about God and trusted God in all that he was doing. And a few times it got him and his friends in trouble because they actually were taken from their land and were living and working in another country for the kings, for the emperors, for the rulers of that country. And while he was living there, him and his friends, they did such a great job kind of helping and working and like they were smart, but they also, they weren't corrupt. Like they didn't do wrong things and kind of try to get money from themselves and do stuff. So the king like kept giving them higher and higher positions of power to like help rule the land, because he's like, I can trust these people. These people are great. And that made people jealous a lot of times. And Daniel just he had an amazing faith. So that's kind of like the second thing you need to know about him. He cared about God, what God cared about so much. He would always want to be talking with God, be praying, and just he believed that God would help them no matter what happened. So one day, the king kind of actually of the kingdom that they were in, it was taken over by a new king. It was taken over, and so they like replaced so many people. But he's like, I need some people to help rule, and Daniel was one of the three guys that he's like, okay, he's gonna help rule over the land. But the other two and some of the like minor helpers to help kind of organize and run this whole giant kingdom, they were super jealous of Daniel. They were like, no. We don't want him. We don't want him doing stuff. Like, let's get him kicked out because like we just don't want him to be part of this. So what they ended up doing was they're like, okay, let's look and let's get him kicked out for something that he's done, as part of helping out the government, as part of like one of the employees like here. So they start looking at him and they're like, oh, shoot, like he's never done anything corrupt. He's never done anything to like benefit himself or other people that's wrong. He also is like, he's never been negligent or lazy. Like he never like kind of forgets about stuff and then something goes wrong because he like forgot to like water the plants, or he forgot to like ask someone to do something. Like he's always on top of everything that he said he would do. But so they're like, okay, if we're gonna catch him, if we're gonna be able to kick him out, it's gonna have to be to do with something about the God he serves, because he loves God and he wants to follow God with everything. So they went up to the ruler, this guy Darius, and they're like, hey King Darius, and they kind of butter him up. They're like, may you live forever. Like, oh, we think you're so great. You know what? We think you're so awesome. What we think is everyone in the whole kingdom, well, in like all the lands that you've taken over, boom, 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 this giant empire should, for 30 whole days straight, should only worship you, should only praise, should treat you like a god. And just only pray to you. If anyone else prays to anyone else, they should be thrown in a den of lions. And Darius is like, whoa, like you guys are just, flattering me so much. Like he's like, you know what? I am king. I can do what I want. Okay, I'll write this down. I'll make this into a law. And they kind of convinced him, like, okay, boom, write it down. Cause in the Medes and the Persians in that empire, if something was a law, even the king couldn't go against it. Once the king like made it into law, he was like, okay, this is how it has to be. So, that he was fine. He's like, okay, when the 30 days started, once that memo went out all across like the different kind of areas of that empire, the 30 days started. But Daniel, he's like, no, I've got faith. I trust God so much. I'm not going to stop praying. I'm not going to stop like talking to God and having a relationship with God this way. So he's like, so every day he didn't change up his routine at all. He would go up into kind of his like house there, and he had a room on like one of the higher floors, and it had a window that faced the city, so people would see him. And this was his routine all the time before. And he's like, I'm not going to break my routine just because these guys convinced the king about this law. So he would kneel and he'd pray, he'd talk to God, and he would just pray and ask God, hey, just talk with him. And after a while, they posted some scouts that were like watching what he was doing, and they go to the king. They're like, oh, hey king, didn't you say something about like for the next 30 days you throw anyone in a lion's den that was praying to someone else other than you? And the king was like, yeah, you know what? I even wrote it down so it couldn't be broken. This was like a big law that I made. And they're like, well, actually, we know this guy Daniel, your buddy, that who is going to be who's been doing it this whole time. And the king was like, floored. He had seen how well Daniel was doing, and he, rather than just being one of the 3 guys helping to run the country, he was going to put him at the top and be his like second in command. And he's like, okay, and he's like, no, not Daniel. And the Bible says like he spent the whole rest of the day until sunset trying to find a way out of it. But once the king had made a law in that country, he couldn't break it. Even the king couldn't unwrite it. So he's like, okay. So he's like, Daniel, I'm so sorry. Like, he had to be taken to the lion's den. And he's like, Daniel, like I tried everything I could. I couldn't get you out of this. So the king puts Daniel in this den full of lions, and then they had a rock that went over top of it to seal it. And then what they did to like make sure it's like, okay, no funny business is going on, they got the king to put his seal, like a big wax thing, and he has a ring seal, and seals it so that if the rock got moved, the seal will get broken. And some of the king's other officials had like rings with seals, so they all kind of sealed it in, made sure that he was like, okay, like this rock's not going to move until like daybreak, until morning. And Daniel is sitting in there. We don't get a lot of like hear a lot of what goes into it. Daniel, only what he says to the king after. Well, here's what goes on. The king, he's just, he's like free. He's like, he doesn't eat that whole night. Like, he's just like, he's so worried for Daniel, who he trusts so much, just like how Daniel trusts in God so much. And he's like, no entertainment. So, kings would have like jesters or like, I don't know, like dancers, or maybe like a bear that juggles. I don't know what the kings had at that time, but he's like, he had no entertainment for that whole night. He was up all night, not eating. And he's like so worried that in like, as soon as the day was like, daybreak was supposed to come, like the sun was coming up, he like ran over and he yells in, he's like, Daniel, like, are you in there, Daniel? And Daniel answers, and the king's like, what? Like, lions should just be attacking, like, should have attacked you at night. But Daniel, like, comes out and he's like, no. God sent an angel who closed the mouths of the lions, and he protected me. And which, like, blew the king away. The king was like, because of your faith, because you trusted in God, and you continually trust, you always trust in God, your God protected you. And the king actually sent out this big decree after that, and wrote in he said all the people's languages, all the languages of the people, sent it to every country, and just said how good God was, and just explained how great God was to all the people. It's an amazing story. And I love hearing about how Daniel just trusted so much in what God would do, and that changed the heart of this king who didn't believe in God before, who actually was like kind of like I'm God before that, but because of this instance, was like, no, like the God of Daniel, the God that we serve, is strong and powerful, and I need to tell everyone about it. Daniel's faith is just so amazing. Thanks, everyone. It's so good to be together.